from Portland, Oregon. This is GovLove, a podcast about local government. GovLove is produced by ELGL, the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. ELGL engages the brightest minds in local government. I'm Kirsten Wyatt, a fellow at the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University, building a new peer learning network called the Digital Service Network, and I'm also the ELGL co-founder. Today, I'm joined by my friend Brian Whittaker, the founder of Humans of Public Service, or HOPS. Brian, welcome to GovLove.
Hey, happy to be here. This is exciting.
Today, we'll talk about the creation of HOPS, a new organization that shares stories of public servants on social media platforms to tell the story of humans in public service, share stories that reflect the diversity in America in an effort to humanize public servants, and create a more positive perception of government. But first, we'll get started with a lightning round. Brian, what is your most controversial, non-political opinion?
So, just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm a music junkie,
Okay.
specifically with hip hop music, but I like to consume any new album that seems quasi interesting on Friday as soon as it comes alive on streaming platforms. But my most controversial, sort of non political opinion,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm a huge Drake fan. I'm going to be
Oh,
39
wow.
years old this year, and he was my most listened to artist of 2022, and I stand by that. That could be embarrassing. My friends might call me a joke, but Drake makes great music for any sort of mood that I have. I can dance to Drake. I can sob while eating a hamburger or something like that. But hey, he's there for me any mood that I got, so I'm with it.
Awesome. That's great. And, I definitely think we've had some prior GovLove guests who have picked closing music by Drake. So I don't think you're
Mm,
alone in the GovLove
mm,
universe. So I'll leave it at
okay.
that.
All right. Let's chat.
All right.
Let's chat, Jake fans.
So along those lines of music, do you remember what your first music purchase was and what format it was on?
Okay. Let's go back to 1995 when Discman skipped. And
Hmm.
the first CD that I purchased was Montel Jordan. This is how we do an album.
No.
Yeah. I was in fifth grade. That was my jam.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, do you still get a little bit hyped when you hear those opening notes?
No, I don't. I feel like I feel like that's my dad's song or something. Like I was in fifth grade and that song was playing in clubs and like that audience's song, but it is no longer mine.
Got
Sort
it.
of similar to like Usher's "Yeah," can't do it anymore.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
All right. And now for the out of left field question. Do you believe in aliens?
Mm, no,
Do you believe in Sasquatch?
I'll go with that. Yeah,
Oh, okay. And what about ghosts?
no, no paranormal.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm,
I like it. I feel like
mhm.
this is a question where sometimes you get like very different answers, especially from public servants.
Mm, okay. Spirit of Abraham Lincoln or something lurking.
Exactly. Well, let's dive in. And why don't we get started and share with us your career path? How did you get to where you are today?
Sure, it's been a very windy, sort of confusing road, but I started off. I started off my career at Lockheed Martin, a big government
Mm,
contractor. How did I get there? I'm a son of immigrants, and my parents were very in tune to the you need some hard skills, right? That sort of
mhm.
doctor, scientist, engineer. And thank goodness for me, I was good at math, so I went the engineering route. Um, I quickly learned while doing my undergraduate degree that engineering wasn't my favorite. So
Mm,
I applied to Lockheed Martin's Operations Leadership Development Program. That went really well. I had the opportunity to go from studying computer engineering in Rochester to living in Orlando for a year and
oh, wow.
moving back to the DMV area. did more sort of operation and IT work at Lockheed. The last role I had there, though, was an interesting one. I was working as a subcontract manager at Lockheed Martin, installing full body scanners across the
Mm,
eastern and central United States. We didn't build
mhm.
them, but we did install them. I managed the contracts to get them there, to get the electrical ran, to get the modifications at the checkpoint. I know way more airport codes than I'd ever want to know in my whole life. But that led me to contract experience and a consulting role, specifically consulting for the General Services Administration.
Okay.
I did that for about 2 years. My client approached me one day and said, "Hey, have you taken any business classes?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, how many?" I was like, "I've got my MBA. What are we talking about?" He's like, "Well, I've got
Mhm.
this opportunity. We're looking to hire an 1102 that is a contract specialist." I applied and I got the role. Uh,
Mm,
I knew when I joined GSA in 2016 that I wanted to work on government wide work. What I hadn't
mm,
really realized when I joined GSA is that public service is my family business, right? My
mm,
oldest sister's
mhm,
a nurse, middle sister a cop, youngest sister a teacher, my mom former teacher, my dad Air Force. So it was just a matter of time until I made my way to public service. But um, from there, I had the opportunity to stand up an organization called the GSA Centers of Excellence. I was
mhm,
employee number two. We scaled the organization from about two employees to 30, one agency, the first being USDA, to about seven agencies. And then I moved on to 18F, was their executive director, moved on to CPB, director of design and development, and then moved on here to FDIC as an innovation officer.
Thinking back to when, you were with Lockheed Martin, you're a contractor, you're approached by government to make that jump. Even though it was in your blood, even though, you're from a family of public servants, was there anything that gave you pause, or was there anything, I guess, on the flip side that really inspires you to say, "Yep, I'm ready. I'm going to jump in with both feet, become a public servant."
You know, it was more so an impact game, right? It was
Mm,
like,
mhm,
Uh, when I was at Lockheed Martin, I wouldn't say I was necessarily firing on all cylinders. I was volunteering on lunch breaks, volunteering on the weekends. Um, Lockheed was great because it helped me pay my student loans, right? But I
mhm,
didn't necessarily feel like I was making the impact that I truly wanted to have.
mhm,
And government presented that opportunity for me, getting the opportunity to basically consult for GSA and see where there was opportunity to make a greater impact, to get more involved at an agency level, at a multi-agency level. That was really attractive to me. How could I uh, sort of strike a balance with all of my student loan debt? How could I strike a balance of compensation and doing the most good? And the federal
mhm.
government presented that opportunity for me. So I think I was really, really energized with some of the projects I was able to be involved in at USDA, as it was a mission that I wasn't very familiar with growing up in the suburbs.
Mhm,
I was nowhere near farmers or understanding their experience, but working with them, I learned so much, and
mhm.
it's just really rewarding work.
You joined government at, honestly, a really exciting time. I mean, you joined some agencies and you stood up some agencies and led programs kind of on the front line of the civic technology movement or wave. So share with us some of the work you've done using technology to improve government services, and some of the most memorable stories or experiences you've had.
Sure. So I don't want to take whole credit for these projects. I think I made a choice when standing up the centers of excellence to um, either be working in the work or
Hmm.
on the work,
Hmm.
and I made the choice of working on the work. So that was bringing people in, helping us find projects, uh, being a peer mentor and or coach in like tough situations, but all the amazing work was done by them. Some of my most memorable projects that either my team or I had some help in being involved in was specifically at USDA. Um,
Mhm.
we were looking for, it was our first agency. We were really figuring out what we were doing, how to navigate USDA with very few relationships. And one of the specific areas we focused on was customer experience. And in this context, the customers are farmers, ranchers, and producers.
Mhm.
One opportunity that we identified was that those customers didn't necessarily have the most success with obtaining loans from USDA. They would either apply for the wrong loan product or just get caught up in the process and things not really shake out or go their way. Well, we had a team of customer experience experts, a combination of feds and industry partners. And what we wanted to do was sort of do a trust but verify. We wanted to actually visit these farmers and
Mhm.
say, hey, how can we be helpful to you? Well, we met a little bit of resistance, but our team was able to get approval to travel to 6 different states and do 80 plus interviews of
Wow.
farmers, ranchers, and producers. What we ended up learning is, despite, at the time, some members of USDA's leadership said, hey, the farmers just want us to automate everything. Well,
Mhm.
what we actually learned was farmers and ranchers and producers had long-standing relationships with their USDA counterparts in
Mhm.
in the building, so they enjoyed going in there and seeing them. But what they wanted some help on was better clarity on these loan products and how to actually get the funding. So what we did was we pulled together basically a wizard that would help any new or existing farmer sort of answer a couple of questions up front, and we would
Mhm.
point them to the appropriate loan product that they could utilize. So that was a really enlightening and sort of rewarding effort to be able to help on that front. The next one, when I was at 18F, I was able to work with a great team that led the revamp of the Department of Justice's civil rights portal. At the
Oh,
time, the
wow.
portal was very long and cumbersome. It wasn't in plain language. And in this project, my team of content strategists and specialists had to work with lawyers who had years and probably even decades of civil rights law experience, and they had to come together to produce a product that citizens and even non-citizens across the U.S. could basically utilize to file civil rights complaints. And the product that they came out with was just so impressive. The visuals, the ease of use, the shortness compared to what the original
Mhm.
product looked like was great. And I think it's just a true testament of when you break down the silos and you combined expertise, how great the end product could truly be. So those are just a few of the ones that really, have me riding high on public service.
I sense a theme and, through those even those 2 stories, but also just knowing your career, that there is a real you have a real genuine curiosity to figuring out how people work or how things work. And even, just the focus you've put in over your career on, user research, it's really shown through. Have you always been a curious person or inquisitive person? And where do you think that comes from?
Um, I don't, well, I have one hunch. I think it's more so my sign. And the reason why I bring this up is I'm about to be a dad for the second time. And
Okay.
if my little nugget comes on a specific date, she won't be a Gemini like me. She'll be a Taurus. And when looking
Okay.
up the characteristics of Taurus and Gemini, I realize I don't like routine and I don't like being confined. So with that said, I put my I, I look into everything, right? And it's sort of a challenge that I have that maybe I'm a little bit too curious. Maybe I have too many interests. And if I could focus a little bit more on one thing, I'd truly be dangerous. But I think part of that is where it comes from, but
Mhm.
also uh this is probably an overplayed term, but I'm a people person. Like I
Yeah.
thrive on relationship building. When I have a strong relationship, I'm loyal to that, and I try to be thoughtful and sort of customize my language based on who I'm speaking to, but getting to know people and helping people is just me at my core.
Mhm. So, in your career, you've worked with farmers, you've worked with civil rights lawyers, and now you've launched HOPS, Humans of Public Service, that's looking at that very wide variety of public servants that work for our governments at all levels. Talk to us about where this idea came from and what motivated you to launch HOPS.
So I'd say the shorthand's really like tragedy and data, right? So
Oh,
in
okay.
2020, George Floyd was murdered, right? And this
Hmm.
wasn't the first time that something like this had happened, but that situation really impacted me. Prior to George Floyd, I was asking a set of questions around who's going to do something, when is this going to stop,
Hmm.
when is this going to change. After George Floyd, I thought, what is it that I can do? What's my circle of influence? How do I make a difference?
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, shoot, it's the middle of the pandemic. Maybe I can have a virtual summit and sort of celebrate people. Give try to give people some hope. I don't have to rent out
Hmm.
a hotel banquet. I don't need to hire a bartender, right? I can just do this on Zoom and
Hmm.
compliment folks. Well, I then quickly realized, Brian, you have no brand. No one knows your name. How are you going to reach these people? How are you going to get them to tell you stories? And my mind went to Humans of New York, right? I think it's a pretty popular social media
Hmm.
handle on Instagram where there's an amazing photographer and writer that walks the streets of New York, captures amazing pictures, asks really great questions, and shares those stories about New Yorkers. Well, I don't have a camera. I really hate writing, but I can spin up a Squarespace form or website with an
Hmm.
associated form so people can nominate public servants. I can capture their picture. I can beg my wife for 30 minutes on a Sunday night to do some light copy editing for me. And, I can post it online to sort of show the diversity and somewhat of the impact that our government's actually having in hopes of eventually one day addressing a data point that I saw. The Partnership for Public Service posted a report that said only 23% of the senior executive service in the federal government identify as someone from a marginalized community. And I said, gosh,
Hmm.
darn it, like that number could be way higher. If you look at the census data, it's around 40% in the US.
Hmm.
So that's my focus. How can I attract enough eyes to do some good, to sort of help the marginalized leaders or aspiring leaders that are in government ascend to greater heights? And then how can I also attract the next generation? So ultimately, that's what I want to do. We're
Hmm.
coming up on a year right now, but the
Hmm.
support's been overwhelming. I'm so grateful. I sort of took a chance, putting this idea out there, and I'm just so grateful that it's been well received.
It's telling to me that in the face of George Floyd's murder and the just the sadness and the anger that so much of our country felt, your first reaction was to do something to recognize or lift up or celebrate folks working in public service. Is that optimism or kind of that approach to um, you know, meeting tragedy with um, that human emotion? Is that something that you've always brought to projects?
I think it's something that I've learned more so over time,
Mm.
honestly.
Hmm.
I think it's one thing to be a fixer, right? Like you could see a problem a certain way, you could see a solution in a certain way, but without talking to the actual person that's experiencing the problem or the
Hmm.
challenge, are you really fixing it or are you doing more harm?
Right.
Right? So, before launching this thing, I had a lot of conversations with people. What is the lowest fidelity thing that I could try out before like
Right.
exerting a lot of energy or creating something brand new, getting a feel for what's been tried before, right? To make sure that I'm sort of delivering the mail. And I think part of where this comes from for me is I think right now, and this could be an overstatement, but I feel like it's hard to be a public servant right now.
Yeah.
Um, with the media, reporting the way it is, or certain coverage, or um, even like in chats with friends. I think it's like a popular thing these days to like wake up and before your feet hit the ground, just take a swipe at a public servant or your government. And how can I sort of promote like more hope, more optimism about the fact that there are people in your government doing great things. But I think
Hmm.
we as a government have an opportunity to sort of share our stories of
Hmm.
the people that are doing great work, why we're here, and how we're actually supporting, not for accolades, not for a pat on the back, but just so that people have faith in their democracy.
In the early days of ELGL, we used to joke that, part of our reason for existing was because if you told somebody you worked for local government, they would assume you were a planner or a mayor, and they didn't know this wide variety of opportunities that exist. And one thing I think Hops has done really well at all levels of government, but it's just a reminder that, especially for younger people, regardless of what you're majoring in college, what you're interested in, what your passion area is, you could do that and work for government and work in support of our communities, our states, of our nation. Share with us a little bit more about how you've seen Hops really be able to provide that showcase, that picture of what public service in 2023 looks like.
Oh gosh, so I think a couple of the things that I strive for, right, is somewhat of a balance. I don't want to be, despite my network, I don't want hops to be pigeonholed into one specific area. Oh, this is only for feds. Oh, this is only
Hmm.
for people in DC. Oh, his network's only IT folks, right? So each
Hmm.
week that I post, I'd aspire to hit both coasts in the week. Maybe one
Hmm.
week, different parts of the middle of America, the Midwest, IT versus acquisition folks. So I think what Hobbes has ultimately done so far, ideally to people outside of government specifically, is just
Hmm.
open up their eyes to the different types of roles and components. I mean, over the past 2 weeks, we've had the opportunity to highlight directors and or like analysts in LGBTQ plus offices
Hmm.
on both coasts, right?
Hmm.
In the U.S., we've had the opportunity to highlight someone that helped complete um, uh, huge projects at NASA. We have just a really wide breadth of what a government career could be. And, this year we're actually aspiring to highlight even more um, ideas of what a government career could look like, and great, great careers that haven't come to government and stayed, but also came to government, had an impact, and then also went elsewhere because the skills that they developed were just so attractive.
Hmm. And such a great point too. I think that that aspect of government being a launching pad for careers, and also this idea that maybe our parents' generation of government services changed, where it's not like you sit down at your desk and you don't get up for 30 years until you retire. So
Right.
love that aspect of what Hops is doing. Talk to us about impact. What are some of the impacts you've seen from the profiles that you've done so far, the feedback that you've received, and how's that driving Hops going forward?
Oh wow. It's seeing some of the comments and where this has gone is really what's driving me and pushing me forward to really focus and try to achieve my vision. Someone actually
Hmm.
said this week, bending the time continuum to achieve your vision, and I like that and I want to borrow it. But a couple of the things is hearing some of the reading some of the nomination emails about the impact the public servant had on a person, and that person getting to hear from them like, you mean this much to me, or you made this impact on me, and being able to
Mm.
sort of facilitate those type of kudos. uh, it's truly amazing. the other is actually getting Congress, uh, Congress actually picking up on humans of public service, and one of the representatives actually reading off a humans of public service story at a hearing, and
Oh,
just the impact
love
that
it.
that had on a public servant, and the sense of pride that they felt, and or just grateful that they, were willing to share their story, to even have their district representative know their name.
Hmm.
um I'd say the other is like a friend anecdotally shared that someone reached out to them after reading her story, and reading it sort of changed their perspective on public service, and sort of got them interested in wanting to apply for a public service job, because they didn't know service delivery had a space in government. So
Oh,
those are like three of the things that just inspired me to continue moving forward, and to figure out sort of, how do I scale this thing so I can hop
right.
into some of the other impactful work that I could see humans of public service getting involved in.
I always feel like this is a horrible example, but which is why I keep repeating it. I do not know. But, I think we've all had friends who they work for some company, private company, and, maybe they have the most sales, or, they meet some goal. And so the company will fly them to Hawaii or Mexico, and they'll have this glamorous vacation. And I always think about how when you work in public service, like that's never going to happen. And so we have to find other ways to lift people up and recognize their work. And I'm not equating a hops profile to an all expense paid trip to Hawaii, but I think when we think about, this idea of what can we do to recognize people within the, very real limitations of public sector employment, I mean, we can start with things as simple as, saying thank you and recognizing folks and nominating them
Mm,
for things. And so, not every hops profile is going to end up in Congress, but like that's such a powerful example of how, if instead of throwing up our hands and saying we can't compete, we say we're going to start small and we're going to find ways to recognize people doing great work.
yeah, I agree with you. And I think another element of this could be sort of team recognition. It
Hmm.
takes so many different people doing so many different things to really impact change and influence it. So, how can we sort of bake that in? I think that
Hmm.
recognition is important. And I think it'll motivate many, rather than, one person trying to be hero, so to speak.
Hmm. Another thing I love about hops is that you're very open to folks nominating themselves or nominating someone they work with. And I think this speaks to the fact that there are some people in this world who are not comfortable saying, I did this thing and it was great, but you can accept nominations from somebody else and, get those folks the recognition that they've earned. And so share with us how listeners could get involved with hops, how they nominate themselves, how they nominate a coworker, and what does that process look like?
Oh, sure. It's, at least I think it's very easy, but I've been eating, sleeping, and breathing this over like the last year or so. But we have a form on our website, and it's very easy. I'd say you go to humansofpublicservice.org/nominate. You type in your name and email. You type in either yourself again as the nominee, or a colleague's first name and email. And what ultimately happens is you provide a sentence or two about why you're nominating them. Right now, there currently isn't any specific criteria, because we're really aiming for like scale and breadth, and diversity of stories. But after you submit that form, we send an email with UCC'd to the
Hmm.
nominee, and just congratulating them, letting them know that they've been nominated. And basically, that nominee completes another form answering three key questions: who are you, and what do you do? The second question is, what inspired you to join public service? And then the third question is, what has been the highlight of your career? So you respond to those three questions. You ideally send us 1 to 3 clear images, hopefully more than just a headshot, something that sort of humanizes you, shows that you're relatable, like you and your dog, or you know, you out doing something that you love, rock climbing or what have you. But um, my wife does a light copy edit. We send it to you for approval, and then we post it online.
I love it. I love it. And it is that easy. And I'm just going to, second that and put in a plug. Um, and, I think one thing I've seen has been how easy it is because you're sharing it on LinkedIn and on Instagram. It's easy then if you're featured to attach that to your own profile, and use it as a way to showcase who you are and why you do this work.
100%.
And so there's a new HOPS profile series for students. Can you tell us more about that and what it's intended to do?
Yes. So one of the goals I'd like to achieve, or a dream that I sort of have, is, a hiring manager being able to come to Humans of Public Service and actually posting a job opportunity to uh, followers of Humans of Public Service to potentially apply to. Well, to make sure that they have a strong base of candidates and applicants, I really want to attract the next generation of public servants to the
Uh-huh.
platform. And to do that, why not actually sort of feature students that are interested in joining public service and have them share their why, to
Uh-huh.
ideally facilitate that connection, whether it's formally or informally, through the Hops platform. So I'd say in the next month, we've just got to get a little template together, and we'll be launching and sharing student profiles and why they want to join the government.
And such a great reminder too that government can't just sit back and you know put our arms behind our head and just say they're going to come to us. Like, mission matters. It does matter, but we also need to work at it. We need to tell the stories about the fact that there are fulfilling careers to be had at the local level, state level, national level of governments, and get that word out there. And so being able to tell those stories, but then also welcome young new voices, I think is so critical. So I'm really grateful that you're doing that. What's next? What are some of your big goals for Hops?
So the framing that I'm trying to get comfortable with, and I'm probably going to iterate on this, but this one's the front runner, is the context of breaking the stories into like three different, uh, I guess, items, if you will, or three different categories. One, what you're seeing right now is more so the present, right? We're highlighting stories of people that are currently in public service. But the next thing we want to do is we mentioned students, so that's the future. And I also want to start highlighting the past, right? Like, who are those people that have come into government? How did they get into government? What did they do while they're here? And where are they
Mm-hmm.
now? Right? How can we sort of
Mm-hmm.
debunk, just like you said, we're not uh, your parents' bureaucrat, right?
Right.
We're different now. We come into government. We're hoping to make some impact. We make that impact, and that knowledge and experience is definitely valued in other areas, in other career paths. So I want to share those stories as well. Um, the last thing I'll say is we're definitely aspiring to get into video. So if
Mm.
there's anyone out there that wants to volunteer a bit, reach out.
Love it. Love it. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you're probably looking for volunteers on the copy edit front, given that your second nugget is on its way. Your wife might need some help. Am I right in throwing that out there?
I think you're in my head, Kirsten. Yep, you're right.
Okay. And I'll just put that plug in loud and clear that if any of this sounds interesting, if this is up your alley of celebrating and recognizing public servants, we'll make sure that Brian's contact information is in the show notes so you can get in touch and get involved. Um, any other big plans or what's coming next in 2023 other than a second Drake fan in your family and more Hops goodness? Anything else coming that we should know about?
uh, Paternity leave. That's gonna be great.
Nice.
Spending time with this nugget. Uh, what else? We talked video. We talked new forums. Potentially some new partnerships, but more to come on that front. But overall, we want to share some new stories, dive a little bit into video and onboard some great volunteers that are passionate about public service.
I love it. All right, our second to last question, and this is one we ask everybody that comes onto GovLove. Why government and why public service? I know we've talked a little bit about this, but would love to hear your closing thoughts as we start to wrap up this episode.
It's I could be framing this wrong, but it's like what happens if we do nothing? Is there more harm in doing nothing than trying to change, than trying to make impact, than trying to make improvements, right? And I just can't sit by and sleep comfortably without trying. So trying to make that impact, that's why I choose government. Call me an impact junkie. Not adrenaline, just impact. I want to make some change. And I think inside government's a great place to do it. Not the only place, but a great place.
Impact Junkie is your new nickname. All right. Our real last question. I know that this is probably the one you've been looking forward to, but if you could be the GovLove DJ, what song would you pick as our exit music for this episode?
All right. So I've been thinking about this all day, and I wanted to pick something timely. I wanted to pick something that my friends wouldn't laugh at me about. So what I specifically chose as a hip hop fan is De La Soul, The Stakes is High. This year, the hip hop community lost one of the 3 members of De La Soul. You may remember them if you're old like me as the group that sang It's Just Me, Myself, and I. But Stakes is High is one that they recently performed on the Jimmy Fallon show with backup from the Roots Band. I love them too. Nice. And that's the one. It's also produced by the legendary Jay Dilla. So if I had to DJ the exit tunes, De La Soul, Stakes is High.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode, and thanks for sharing more information about how GovLove listeners can get involved with humans of public service.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
GovLove is produced by a rotating cast of ELGL volunteers. ELGL is the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network, and you can reach the GovLove podcast on Twitter at GovLovePodcast. And if you'd like to get involved with the new network we're building at the Beck Center in partnership with U.S. Digital Response, the Digital Service Network, please visit us at digitalservicenetwork.org. We're a growing peer learning network that supports an open, collaborative, and nimble network of government leaders who use technology, data, and design to innovate and improve public services. Thank you for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
Swole head rappers with they sickening raps, claps and gaps, making the whole sick world collapse. The facts are getting sicker, even sicker perhaps. I stick a push to make a bundle to escape the synapse. Man, life can get all up in your ass, baby. You better work it out. Now let me tell you what it's all about. A skin not considered equal. A meteor has more right than my people who be wasting time screaming who they've hated. That's why the native tongues has officially been reinstated. Stakes is high. You know them stakes is high. When we talking about